Hi, I'm Mitch, and welcome to the Restoration Road here at Parkview Field, home of the Fort Wayne Tin Caps, the single-A farm club with the San Diego Padres. And here is the president of the Fort Wayne Tin Caps, Mike Nutter. Mike, thanks for being here.
Thank you. It sounds so prestigious, but it's just a job.
But you use it as a platform to honor God. It's so cool. And I'd just like to pick up your story. As a kid, you're growing up in Akron, Ohio, is that right?
That's correct.
And you're into sports. You end up being a good golfer. And I think there's a particular point where your dad says, we're moving.
There is a particular point where we're moving from Ohio to the San Francisco Bay Area. Grew up in a great Lutheran church, Missouri Synod home with great models, my mom being a teacher, my dad being in sales, older brother and sister. Bit of a culture shock moving out to the Bay Area. In hindsight, one of the best things that ever happened to me. At the time, I don't think I would have been willing to admit that.
After high school, where did you decide to go to college?
I transferred to Bowling Green in Northwest Ohio, not that far from Fort Wayne, and graduated from sport management and a marketing minor. And here we are 23 seasons later, working in minor league baseball, still doing what I love more than ever.
Describe your spiritual life, high school, college.
Great question. So in high school, we moved out to the Bay Area. And I certainly don't want to imply that it's an area of heathens or anything like that. But I remember some folks, some of my best buddies, we were all competing in different sports together back then, saying, what are you guys doing, on Sunday morning? Or they'd ask me, we were beloved Browns fans. There aren't many of those left. And they would ask me, are you going to watch a game? And it's like, well, we're going to church. And then if there's any time, we'll watch it after, remembering that football back there starts at 10 a.m. And so they would always ask me, why do you go to church? And I don't know that I knew the biblical answer, other than it's what we do. It's why we live. I couldn't point to a lot of stuff then necessarily to talk about the why. And then I remember asking my dad one time, biggest Cleveland Browns fan in the world, long suffering, I might add. And he said, one day I asked him, I said, do you ever get tempted to miss a game? He said, why? Because they're playing the Bengals? That kind of thing. And it was like, no, this is who we are. This is I've given my life to Christ. And I had been baptized, and I had always gone to church, and I'm not sure I had at that point. I don't know if I knew what I was doing or living for. I mean, I knew that we went, and I didn't mind going. It wasn't like one of those things. And then I transferred to Bowling Green in Ohio, and that was a little more of where I'm from. Again, proud of my time in the Bay Area, but a lot more of people of like values and of different things. And I can't look you in the eye and tell you that I was going there. And so I would go for the big holidays, and occasionally I would go to some stuff. And I graduated from Bowling Green, and my first full-time job was with a team in Florida. Threw myself in. And what I mean by that is I was selfish. It was about the next sale, the next game, the next maybe night at the bar at some times in my life. And then I took a job in Nashville, Tennessee. And I probably became even more selfish. Mitch, there was a time in my life that if you Googled my name, there was no Google back then, it would have come up not all that positively. What it would have been was hypocritical. And so I didn't mind telling somebody maybe what I thought of their lifestyle, but it didn't always apply to my own. And I received a call one day from my sister, 6 years older than me. We won't use any numbers. And she said, I think you need to get right. Whoa, hang on a minute. How do you know? She was right, but how do you know?
Yeah, how did she know?
I think she could just tell. We've always had a loving relationship, even with the distance. Her and I have always maintained a closeness. She's somebody I look up to. I joke that I go to, I work in a baseball stadium, and she went to Vandy Law School. And so I don't think my brother would be offended. She's the smartest of the three of us. We've all had success. We all showed at a young age to our parents what we want to do for a living, and we all went into it. We've all done it. And she said, I'm asking you to go to this church in Franklin, Tennessee. And if you don't go, I'll know. Thought that was, are you threatening me? I didn't ask her because the answer was probably yes. And so I went into a church in Franklin, Tennessee, and I walked in, and I had it figured out in about 30 seconds. All wrong. I walked in, And it's a lot more of what we'd see now. It's a lot more of a pastor in what we're wearing.
Yeah.
In jeans. I think he had Birkenstock sandals on. I know he had some sort of pullover like we do. And I had it all figured out. This isn't for me. I mean, before it ever started. And, you know, what did she ask me to come here for? And then as sure as I'm sitting here right now, that speaker, that pastor that night, it was the Holy Spirit and the Lord directed at me. I don't mean it so selfishly or arrogantly that there weren't 15 other people that might have needed to hear the same message, because I'm sure a lot of us did. But it was me. And it was, this is so flippant or cliche, but it was humbling. And all I could think of was, get over yourself. And so the next week, I didn't tell you this when we've met prior, the next week I was on a flight. This isn't one of these flights that was going down and somebody's writing something. I still have it. I'm not a big writer. I'm getting better at being a reader. And I wrote out like a personal mission statement. And the last line of it said, walk with Christ again. And it was an opportunity for me to reconvene some priorities. We'll talk in a minute. I've had some mistakes along the way, setbacks I would call them along the way. But it was a chance to get right. And I don't mean it like to pay some big penance, but just to focus on what matters. And so then the door opened to move to Fort Wayne, Indiana in October of '99. And I joked, it was a much better professional opportunity, but I was afraid to go for the church.
You're afraid you're going to miss the only place that could happen was in Franklin, Tennessee?
It was in Franklin, Tennessee, the only place in the world. And you'd think it might have been more crowded if that was the case. And so I came up here and we've tried some places, and my wife and I have had a church home, and it's just been a great, run.
I want to go back in your career a little bit. I think you were interning in Chicago, is that right?
Correct.
With the baseball team. And that was your first start, first exposure to baseball. And I'd like you to share what your first job was.
My first job was very glamorous. I picked up all the gum and cigarette butts out of the lawn area. So over our shoulder here at beautiful Parkview Field, they can see the lawn area. Back then you could smoke at games. You know, it's been a little while. And so my first job was to pick all the gum and cigarette butts out of there. My mentor, my leader in the industry, asked me after, how do you think you did? I said, perfect. We were taught from a young age, pretty good work ethic in our home. And he said, okay, I'll cut you a deal. For every one of them that I find, it's $1 out of your salary. And I said, oh, yeah, I guess. What do I get if you don't find any? And he said, I tell you what, if you don't get any, I'll pay you the rest of the year and you don't have to work a day. And I said, okay, well, this is a great deal. I think he stopped counting at about 50. I was convinced there weren't any, but the point is that's a big lawn area. And maybe it's a learning lesson that we're working on with our young kids of even when we think we did the best job, maybe go back and it's not about being done first sometimes. It's about the best job.
So he taught you how to do it right, and you mentioned that he was a mentor. Talk about how he connected with you through your journey through baseball. Miami and Tennessee.
Yeah, so I went to, after 4 years at Kane County out in the Chicago suburbs, he helped me get a job in Florida. I worked for the Marlins. At Bowling Green, you had to do 2 semester-long internships, but they couldn't be at the same place. So I was sure at 22 I was only going to ever work for the Kane County Cougars because we know it all. And he helped me get a job there, and then they bought the team in Nashville. He brought me there.
And you're making money hand over fist.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just killing it. I think the first full-time job was $14,400 a year.
Wow.
And so $1,200 a month or whatever that came to. I still got it back there. And I remember calling my dad telling him that was the only job I ever needed. You know, and I believed it at the time. And then Nashville, and then actually he got a job here. He came here as the general manager, brought me up from Nashville. After 1 year, the old owner and him parted ways, and they asked me to interview for the job. It was the most laid back I'd ever been in a job interview because I didn't think I had any chance of getting it because the guy that brought me in was gone.
Here at the Fort Wayne Tin
Yeah, and so it was like, well, I'll just be relaxed and this will be cool, and that's neat they're interviewing me. Then about 3/4 of the way through, I thought, maybe I have a chance at this. And then they offered me that, and that was in October of 2000. Way back then, I was one of the younger GMs. And it's been just a blast to run.
I think some people think maybe you draft the team, you manage the team.
We wouldn't be as good if I did all that.
What is your role?
That's great. So I help oversee a full-time staff of about 31 folks. part-time staff of around 600. So we do not do anything with the on-field product. The San Diego Padres, our current partner, books the manager, they sign all the players, they pay them, they promote them, demote them, release them, you know, those kinds of things. We're over 130 guys that have played in Fort Wayne that have gone on to the major leagues. So we're on a good run. We're 6 straight years in the playoffs. No other team is above 2. And so they deserve a lot of credit. Then what we do is we set the schedule, we set the game times, the promotions, we do the group sales, we determine the craziness of everything that goes on in between innings and all the theme night jerseys and that kind of stuff. So we joke that we do about everything but the team. And now we're great partners with them. The players absolutely love playing in front of these fans in this facility. They think it's the big leagues. And it's like, no, young man, when you finally get there, if you get there, it's a little of that Field of Dreams mentality. What we deal with is they feel how special it is at Lowe's Single A.
Yeah.
You know, when I get to meet some guys after they've reached their ultimate dream, it's pretty neat reconnecting. And I don't mind hearing stuff like, I thought Parkview Field was the best field ever until I walked into Yankee Stadium. And it's like, well, yeah, if you would have multiplied our budget by 10, we could have built that. And so it's just one of those cool things to see these guys along their journey. There's a thing called Baseball Chapel that every Sunday in major and minor league baseball, they give a speech and a sermon to the home team, the visiting team, and the umpires, all separately in English and Spanish. And to see our guys come out and witness to their faith and those kinds of things is cool. This game, there's a lot of struggle for front office executives and for players. But if you set it up the right way, you can keep, you know, excelling, excuse me.
And I love how you intentionally honor Christ personally in everything that you do here at the stadium and with your team and in your encounter with the fan base. It's just powerful. But let's also talk about your family. Where did you meet Beth?
We were introduced friend to friend here in Fort Wayne. She's a Warsaw native, so it's one of those things that, you know, I was just here. It was in the 2000 season, so I hadn't lived here more than 6 months. And I kept hearing about this gal that was in a relationship that was about to end and all those kinds of things. And so we set it up as you do when you're that age. I'll bring 5 of my friends and you bring 5 of your friends. And again, it's pretty cliche, but there was a pretty instant connection. We dated for a couple of years and I proposed to her. She was crazy enough to say yes. And so we're about 12 years in. We've been blessed with a young boy and a young girl, 15 months apart right now, 4th and 5th grade. And so he's trying to hit every baseball over the fence and make every jump shot. And she's flipping off couches and practicing cheerleading routines. We don't push that stuff on them, but we tell them as long as you're good enough and have a desire to play, we'll keep supporting you. So those are incredibly fun times. And then when the season isn't going, I help coach a youth travel baseball team and a little basketball team because I can't get enough of it. And that I love because that's just kids. And if you do it the right way, and I think 9 out of 10 coaches and parents and families do, then it's about learning lessons and teamwork. Let's forget about the NBA and the MLB. Fort Wayne's blessed to have some guys in each, you know, around the country and some major professional stuff. But we're talking about teamwork, respect for your fellow man. And then maybe my life would mirror this the most. When you make mistakes, what do you do and the accountability and ownership of it?
Let's talk about that. You're very transparent about a particular mistake, and I think you're at work one day and you get a call from Beth, your wife.
I did.
I'd like to unpack that for us.
Yeah, so I received a call. It was right around it was during the 2009 season. Everything was going great, right? Things couldn't be better. And she called and she said, "Hey, I need to talk with you immediately." And I said, "Okay, we're talking." And she said, "No, in person." And I said, "Okay." And she said, and I said, "Okay." I'm not just saying this. In my arrogance, in my sinful nature, I didn't know what she was talking about. I mean, I knew I had messed something up from the tone, but I'm not trying to just gloss over it. No. And she said, "I found some stuff on the computer that is not appropriate." Sank in my chest, guilt, like that I had never felt before. I'm not a guilt guy. My parents aren't guilt people. Let me be clear. She wasn't putting me on a guilt trip. I had let her down beyond belief. So I had been, I think frequenting is the only way to say it. Inappropriate, let's call it what it is in the mode of transparency and the desire to help others. Pornographic websites. And so I can sit here and tell you I wasn't going every day, and none of that stuff matters. That's all nonsense by people that aren't willing to take accountability or responsibility, of which at one point in my life I was one. And so I came home, and we had some very tough conversations. It was not anything at all to be proud of. And I'm at a great place now, and I'm not trying to jump all the way ahead.
Right.
There's so many things out there set up that if you want to be accountable and you're willing to put your name and reputation out there, you can be. And what do I mean? There's mirror websites that every website that I go to, a buddy of mine gets a copy at the end of the night of every site that I go to. He probably sees more weather sites than he'd ever care to, during the season. And so it's one of those things that
Curtis Smith's going to be happy to hear that.
He's a buddy, so I'm glad. I hope he is, and a fellow Buckeye lover like myself. And so it's one of those things that you can do it. So let's not just gloss over it.
Right.
So then what about it? It required some major transparency with my wife, with my best friend in the world. I think that's probably obvious.
You needed the Word of God, the people of God, the Spirit of God to find restoration. You're going to tell us how that happened.
That's exactly what I needed. That's exactly right. Because even after the disclosure of it, there was a lot of guilt.
Yeah.
And let's be real, although we're talking on something that'll show all over, this is as far out there as I've ever gotten. By choice, I've wanted to, because I think there's so many people that are unwilling to talk about it. And it shouldn't take, for lack of a better term, getting caught or being exposed or whatever term you want to use. And take me out of it. I know some great guys that through my story have now reached out to me and said, how do you sign up for this? And it's, hey, brother, can I be your accountability partner? I need one of my own, and it might be best if we're not each other's, but let's look at this. And so it's one of those things that I can sit here and tell you with 100% honesty, 6 months after, we'd never been closer, we'd never been stronger. I didn't realize, and again, I'm not here to play, woe is me or to defend, condone. I didn't realize the damage it can do and that it had done and it was doing. Now, the great thing about it is you can stop, and when you stop, you can repair all of that. You can repair all of that. Certainly by God's grace, it has been repaired through me, but damage that I did that I didn't even realize I was doing.
And looking back on it, I think statistics say that boys now are checking out pornographic sites somewhere between 9 and 11. And you can look back and know that you were seeing things maybe 12 or 13 years old.
That's right.
Yeah.
Pre-internet. I'm old. And so it's pre-internet. And so I remember, I don't remember a lot from my childhood, but I remember something like that vividly. I want to be clear. Not in our home, never in there. But you're at the end of the street with your buddies, and all of a sudden something comes out, and it's just, so that's what it was. And so my challenge is, as a father, and as we sit here today, and they're 9 and 10, how can we learn from my mistakes? Not to pretend like they didn't happen, but how can we learn from them? And then when they are exposed to that stuff, what can we do then? And so when you are willing to open yourself up to it, there's a lot of great resources. If anybody would ever see this and think that I could be a resource, I'm always reachable by email and voice and all that kind of stuff. Put it out there. Tell somebody you need help. It can be kept in confidence, and I can get you in line with some stuff that would be great. Yeah, don't hide it. Confess it. Agree with God what it is and from His perspective, and then you find restoration as you bring it to the light. That hasn't been the only challenge you've had. You've dealt with all kinds of things, but not too long ago, you got pretty sick. And you had no idea why. I got a little sick. I was actually up here close to this, and I was having a conversation with somebody, and in the middle of the conversation, just like you and I are doing right now, I blacked out. And don't know what it was. Had all kinds of medical tests. I guess the good news is they didn't find anything. I joked with a friend, they did a brain scan, and it came back empty. It's one of those things that it's just, We didn't know what it was at the time, and quite frankly, still might not know everything. So here we sit in great health now, get routine checkups, everything is good, and just made a decision to eat differently, drink differently, all those kinds of things. And for me personally, it's really worked out well.
You had a nephew that has quite a powerful story, and it impacted you tremendously. I'd like you to share that.
My good buddy and nephew, Austin McCleary, we lost him 2 years ago in July of 12 from neuroblastoma cancer. He had it 4 times. He beat it 3 times. That's a Hall of Fame hitter in my book. 3 out of 4 is 750. And 750 with some damage, as one of my buddy likes to say. A home run in there, coming back one time when he might not be able to beat it and those kinds of things. And the 4th time, he lost the battle. Great Christian family, Warsaw, Indiana. And he was down to his last count. Well, I'll say this. He woke up one night in the middle of the night and he went into my brother-in-law's room and he said, "Dad, my back hurts. You know, we need to go do some testing." He had just been checked. I want to tell you, 2 or 3 weeks later, 100% cancer-free. 100. Not 90, 100. This is a couple weeks later. And
how old is he at the time?
He would have been 11.
11.
Yeah, and the big brother to my little guy Carson at home, and it's just one of those things. Just a great kid. And Andy says, "Hey, man, go back to bed. It'll be fine." He looks at him. He says, "I think we both know what this is."
An 11-year-old.
Okay. And he had battled, and he never complained about one shot, one anything. And they went, and it had overtaken some vital organs just in those couple of weeks. And so we were all faced for the first time that he might not beat this one. We believe in the Lord and the miracles, and he had already shown so many that it was just one of those things. And the 4th time got him. And a few weeks before he passed, he started getting his clothes on for school. He hadn't been attending school regularly every day at that point. And they looked at him and they said, "What are you doing? Like, you don't need to go. It's okay." And he said the name of a young girl in his class. And he said, "I'm not sure she knows Jesus, and it's my job to tell her about him." The wait to meet the family at the viewing was an hour and a half in Warsaw, Indiana.
Wow.
It was longer than any ride to get in any amusement park or ballpark, and it was all about people paying their respects to a young guy that did it right. The last story I'd tell about that, my man Austin, the day that we buried him, this is a true story. He saw some rainbows throughout his journey. If someone wants to tell me it didn't happen, they can say whatever they want. There were clear days that he saw rainbows. We took it as a sign. We weren't overly looking for stuff. There were different days when some different diagnoses and prognosis came along that we saw some rainbows. As sure as I'm sitting here, the day that we buried him in July of 2012 was a day with not a cloud in the sky. There was not a cloud in the sky for 500 miles. There was no chance of rain for a week.
You keep track of those things.
I do keep track of those things. We put him into the ground at the cemetery in Warsaw and looked up in one of the most beautiful rainbows I've ever seen in my entire life. Incredible. Somebody that's a non-believer, it's coincidence, it's some chance, it's something. I stopped trying to worry about my plan and made it about his several years ago. And I think it was one thing to Mom and Dad that it's all right. He's with me now. What a gift.
What a gift of peace that passes all human understanding. I can't let you go without you sharing your new journey with your son. Because I think we have a tendency when God saves us from something or restores us from something that we go, okay, and that's
everything's all right. It's over now.
Yeah. But you're in the battle, and you're doing something I think is really powerful. In fact, I think I texted you right after we met and said, "Dude, this is huge, what you're doing."
Well, I'm just trying to, I think there's so much noise out there, and so many distractions, and truthfully, temptations. And I hope he plays travel baseball as long as he wants to. And maybe he gets to play in high school and beyond, and who knows about any of that stuff. And maybe it's this, and maybe it's that. But there are so many things out there right now of temptation that I don't have, man, I gave in and we didn't even have the internet.
Right.
You know, and so it's one of those things that we started a few weeks ago. I didn't even know what to say. I was more nervous about that than probably any sales call. But I invited my son to lunch and let him pick anywhere that he wanted to go. So he picked a place, and we went out, and it was just him and I, and we sat down and we started those conversations. And the first question I asked him was about girls, and I think his face got more red than this tin caps pullover. I don't want to talk about that, man. And I said, okay, well, that means we're going to. And so we had a few conversations, or a few, lines. And he looked at me and he said, Dad, we're out at recess talking about whether Stanton hit a home run last night for the Marlins and how far did it go. And what I am trying to do with him is just start the process. To know that he can trust in me and confide in me. He doesn't know all of my past. In time, he will. Right. At 10, I don't think it's appropriate. And so the point is, maybe he doesn't go to Dad, but maybe he goes to somebody. And so my calling in life is to, let him know where I am. Let him know mistakes that I've made, even without all the detail. And then I think surround him with other good Christian men of some of these teams that he's on. And hey, if you don't want to tell me, over time, our kids play together, you can tell Mr. Kruse, or if you ever have a question or something like that. If we can arm these kids with the sword when they need it to be aggressive, but the shield a lot to fend off the noise, I think we have a better chance. We're not shooting for perfection. We'd love it. We talk that we'll take excellence. It doesn't have to be perfection. And when something doesn't go your way, we're going to talk about accountability and ownership.
Mike, you're an excellent president of a baseball organization.
That's the easy part.
And excellence inspires other people and it honors God. And you've allowed this to be a platform to reveal the heart of Christ to those you encounter by serving them with excellence. But more than that, you are a faithful husband, you're a nurturing father, and you're a son, you're a brother. You see that this is about relationships on this side, and that's what lasts for eternity. I just want to thank you, for inspiring me to grow in all those areas in my own life. And I just want to thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure.